That's him.
Admit.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Oh, hi everyone.
Hi.
Can I just say thank you so much for doing this. We really, really appreciate it. It's so good of you. So I'm Heather Stewart, by the way. So without further ado,
You can't see you.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
without further ado, I'll hand you over to the reading ambassadors, and they are the experts.
Okay,
Thank you
wonderful.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, so we are
Eva.
Susanna.
Jamie.
Emily.
and I'm Owen, and we are the Brechin High School Reading Ambassadors, and this interview is for our podcast, Prêt Radio. We'd like to welcome a very, very special guest, award-winning poet, internationally acclaimed author, listed by the Independent newspaper as one of the 100 most influential LGBTQ plus people in the United Kingdom, the one and the only Mr. Dean Atta.
Wow. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Really appreciate it. Lovely to be talking to you.
Thank you so much for giving up your time to speak with us. We know how busy you are. Thank you. And happy Pride Month. Our school library has several of your novels in our LGBTQ plus collection. We are proud that this is a permanent collection. We don't just mount displays for Pride once a year.
Brilliant, thank you. And I can see one of my books in your display.
Yeah.
Lots of lovely rainbows.
We've got the other one here as well. We have
brilliant.
it sat over there because it's our book of the month for June. Anyway, so you have a new novel out, I Can't Even Think Straight, which is our book of the month for June. Perfect timing, as this is a queer coming out story set in an English high school. It is very sweet with an optimistic outlook, but is also honest and doesn't shy away from serious themes like racism, bullying, sexual assault, and the fear many LGBTQ plus teenagers feel about coming out and the challenges they face. So, can you tell us about your motivation for creating these relatable characters and telling their story?
Well, when I was at school, we had a law called Section 28, which meant you couldn't have LGBT books in schools and school libraries. Teachers couldn't say it was okay to be gay. Teachers wouldn't come out if they were gay, and they wouldn't be able to support their LGBT students. So it was a time for me at school when there was no representation, there was very little support, and there was a very little sense of feeling like anyone really understood me. Mm-hmm. People were kind to me at school, but I just didn't feel completely understood. And so I wanted to put these experiences into my stories in terms of, if there's a young person who doesn't feel understood, they might see their own experience in these characters and feel understood in that way. So that was part of it for me. The lack of representation I had when I was younger, and wanting to make up for that, and put forward, black queer characters, because there are lots of LGBT stories out there, but I think we still need more black representation in that genre as well. So if we can call LGBT a genre, I don't know if that's correct.
Actually,
It always fits into romance in one bit.
Yeah, exactly. This particular book, I think, is a romance, and and I wanted to have fun with that kind of friends to lovers storyline.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Heartstopper, but I want
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Has your ability to create poetry been a positive way to address any adversity you may have faced in your own life?
Definitely. I think before I knew exactly how I felt about some things, I'd sit down and write a poem and figure it out that way. When I was younger, I wrote poems about my mixed race identity being Greek Cypriot and Jamaican. I wrote poems about my dad not being around when I was growing up. I wrote poems about things I was seeing in the news, and things I felt passionate about, and I felt like I got clarity from writing poetry, even though sometimes you can kind of hide behind metaphor and similes and all of that. I still sometimes feel like it gets to the truth in a strange way. When you create these kind of metaphors, they make perfect sense suddenly, and in a way that you might not be able to explain if you're being completely literal.
Yeah, poetry is like perfect for that. And the next question: how did it feel as an author to hold your book in your first book in your hand for the first time? And does that feeling continue as you release more of your recent books?
Yeah, the first time I held one of my books, or my first book in my hand, I felt, wow, I'm actually
made it.
And I'd been writing for and performing poetry for about 10 years before I published my first book, and it took other people to tell me I was ready to do a book. It took one of my mentors, Benjamin Zephaniah, to tell me I had enough poems. It took several publishers approaching me and asking if I would want to publish a book for me to sit down and think, do I want to do a book? Because I was very happy performing my work. I liked going to open mics and also putting my work on the internet and sharing it that way. I didn't consider a book until other people started telling me I should or could do that. And then once I had one, it really opened a lot more doors as well, because as an author, like, I got more invites into schools, I got more invites to literature festivals, and a whole other part of kind of poetry, publishing, literature, being an author opened up to me. And so it was a fabulous feeling, and every time I know each book will open some more doors or reach some more people, and so that's why I love writing and publishing, because you never know who your books are going to reach or what opportunities they might even create for you as the author.
Very cool.
I just want to say, open mics are a very good thing to get your stuff out there. They're also very fun to go to. I love hearing all the different,
they're kind of
all people's different music and
a good way to
poetry.
start out. See if what if your work means something to other people and has an effect.
Yeah.
And I met lots of cool people from doing open mics, and people that do not just poetry and literature, people that do comedy, people that do music. I did open mics and performances alongside people like Ed Sheeran, back in the day. So it was, someone looks very shocked.
I'm not surprised, but
so it was nice to see, like, that, you never know from the same stage, where people are going to end up. So I love going to open mics because you're gonna hear all sorts of new ideas, meet all sorts of different people. It's very democratic, an open mic. So I think anyone listening that has an open mic nearby, go and just watch first, and then if you like the vibe, think about performing, whether it's singing, whether it's poetry, whether it's something else, comedy. You never know. So I think it's worth sharing your talents and your passions, but also, it's just a really interesting space to see lots of different things you might not encounter because it's not going to be on the TV or the radio or on a podcast yet. But open mics are really exciting places to see new material.
I think getting the vibe of something can really change your outlook on it, and I think it's a very important thing to do before you judge it. I think I think it's very important in general to get the vibe first, and if you're not okay with that, then that doesn't apply to you. but if it does, then I think it's also very important to continue thinking about that as well.
Absolutely, I love that.
All right. So, you are an acclaimed poet, and your novels are what's called novels in verse or narrative poems. This format is very useful for engaging reluctant readers. Stories are quick to read, but multi-layered and packed with meaning. Our school library also holds titles like Sarah Crossan's Moonrise, Manjeet Mann's The Crossing, and Jason Reynolds' Long Way Down. All very accessible windows into emotive subjects like capital punishment, refugees, and gang culture. So, firstly, can you tell us about your process when writing narrative verse?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, all of those authors are wonderful people. I've met them all, and they're so kind. And I think authors really support each other, and because novels in verse are a smaller kind of category of books that are out there, I think a lot of the people that write novels in verse know each other, and so we'll shout out each other's books.
Yeah, so it's like a tight-knit community.
And it's lovely to be part of. And my process is kind of coming up with the central image or idea, because that's more likely going to be the metaphor that I carry through and repeat throughout the story. And also, getting the character voice right is really important, because all my books are first person, present tense, so you have to enjoy this narrator telling you the story in real time. So trying to get the voice right, trying to really understand them. I often write more than goes into the book. I'll write little side quests, and I'll write like diary entries in the voice of the character.
Oh, okay.
I'll write, and I'll get them thinking about where they're at in their life, so reflecting on kind of their state of mind before I begin the actual story. So I just know where they're at, and then I know where I'm taking them to.
Yes, so you can feel and understand
their voice sometimes changes because they mature and they learn new things, broaden their horizons. So it's kind of getting the imagery, getting the metaphors, getting the voice down, not being afraid to write more than I need. Often also, like, outside of the writing, making a playlist for my characters, what music they like to listen to.
That's so fun.
And then also with the character Kai in I Can't Even Think Straight, like what books he likes to read. So he likes to read Heartstopper. He likes, one of his favourite books is Skellig. He also likes Mallory Blackman's Noughts and Crosses. And then on the music side, like him and his friend, they like Charlie XCX. So like it's just kind of about getting to know them, so I know what references that feel appropriate to put in. And that kind of helps me kind of know what their influences are, and that may come out in the things that they say as well.
So it's like a real person that you're writing about instead of just a fictional.
You can fully understand them.
Absolutely, because I think Michael in The Black Flamingo, my first book, was very close to me, but the boys I've written in my second and third books were different to me, and so I had to kind of like really kind of decide everything about them, because I wasn't always pulling from my own tastes and my own favourite things. I needed to give them distinctive personalities to myself, because I don't want to write myself over and over again. It is fun to create really fully rounded characters, and that goes with that goes for the secondary, supporting characters as well. I'll think as much about them as I do about my kind of narrator protagonist, because I want everyone to feel like a whole person, and not just there for their part of the story, but they have a whole story going on beyond what you see on the page as well.
Very cool. Right, the next question is, will you continue to write narrative poems? Would you ever write a more standard format novel, or a play, or even a screenplay?
I'd like to write all of the things you just said.
Fair enough.
I'm keen to write more in prose. I definitely want to adapt one of my books for stage or screen.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
But I think writing in verse is really special, and I'm dyslexic, and so I find it really much easier to write. I can stay kind of focused, and I think the readers can stay more focused with the space around the words, and I find the line breaks kind of create the rhythm, and it kind of guides you as how it wants to be read. So I feel like I can really have a bit more influence over how you'll read verse, as opposed to how you'd read it if it was in prose. I also think verse is quite snappy and quick to read in a way, and because the sections are quite short, I think it gives you even more satisfaction that you can kind of like read a bit and then pause or keep going. But I just feel like the sections being short, for me as a writer, like I can write one of my shorter kind of chapters in one sitting, so maybe in like 4 hours or something, I can craft something that I feel like, okay, great, and then move on to the next one. Whereas I think if you're writing much longer pieces, you'll be going over several days to write it, and you don't stay in the moment. I want my books to feel like you're in the moment with the character as you're reading it. So that's why I love verse. But I'm not restricting myself to verse. I want to do other things too.
I feel narrative poems as well, they flow really easily. Like it's really easy to just keep going, and then once you finish like the 4 lines, you're like, oh, I want to read the next one. I want to read the next one.
Exactly.
They have a nice rhythm to them,
and it just pulls you in.
So,
Oh, good. I'm
one
glad
more chapter, but we all know it's a lie. It's a whole lie. One more chapter. It's not real.
So this is also Empathy Week, and the Reading Ambassadors have promoted Read for Empathy books for years now. And all the research shows that reading is key to developing empathy for often marginalised groups. We really enjoyed your previous works, The Black Flamingo and Only on the Weekends. Great reads, but also hugely important because of the positive representation of black and brown LGBTQ plus characters. So, do you agree that reading improves empathy, and do you think diverse representation in books is improving?
I think there is a great spread of representation in books, and I think it definitely improves empathy. As a writer as well, I find, writing characters that are different to me is a great exercise in empathy. Like in all three of my young adult novels, I've got trans characters, and I'm not trans myself, but I have many trans friends, and so for me it was really important to represent trans people in my stories. Of course, it's important for trans writers to do that as well, so for them to be given book deals and the opportunity to represent trans characters. There's a book on the shelves behind you, Felix Ever After, and I loved reading that book by Case and Callender because I learned things that I, didn't know about the trans experience. And I find often, when I read a book by an author from a different background from me, I learn stuff about, what it's like to be a person like them. And so that's what I, like to do in my own writing, thinking about someone who is straight or white, or not a boy, like reading these and kind of seeing that experience and learning something about it in a way that they might not get from just kind of conversations. I think sometimes or it can begin a conversation, which I think is a lovely thing as well, that you can use this book if you want to explain something to someone, or you can hand them a book and say, well, read this and then we can talk about it, because they have that starting point.
Reading out a conversation.
I've heard from parents and children that they've kind of a parent has bought a book for their child, so then they could have that conversation about their child, or the other way around, a child has read one of my books and then given it to their parents so they don't have to have the conversation. But I always found that was a good way to kind of have conversations. My mum did it with me. She gave me books to kind of begin conversations, and I found that really helpful. So yes, I think reading is a great tool for empathy, and while we can as writers represent people with different backgrounds to ourselves, I think everyone should have the opportunity to represent their own background. If they want to be a writer, there should be ways to get your story out there, whether it's through traditional publishing, self-publishing, independent publishing, putting it online. So I just think everyone deserves the right to tell their story.
So what impact do you aim to have on your readers? Is it important for you to create something that would influence or comfort someone else?
Yes, to both. I think comfort's a lovely way of putting it. I think someone reading one of my stories and feeling less alone is a great thing that I would love to see happen. Or someone reading one of my stories and learning something and reflecting on something that they hadn't considered before, broadening their horizons and giving them more empathy and understanding of the people around them, or the people they may meet in the future, because some of us don't have a diverse friend group, aren't at a diverse school, but you're going to go into the world and meet lots of different people in the future. So it's good to kind of have some insights as to what their experience may be like. Of course, my books can't represent every black LGBT person in Britain,
course,
so everyone's got their own story to tell, but I hope that mine, if it's the first encounter you're having of someone of that identity, it gives you a way in to kind of understanding people more, and if it is your identity, then you feel hopefully I have represented you in some way, even if it's not, exactly the same as you. We are all different, regardless of race or gender or sexuality. But it is nice to kind of like put underrepresented stories out there. So that's why I like doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, quite a lot of my friend group are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I mean, I have a lot of friends who are mixed or have a different background from this country. And I think it's so important to write these stories and to, you're not always going to be able to bring everyone in on something, but you can always say to those people that are like that they can be represented in a book. And I think that is so important to show to younger people that it's okay to be the way you are and to think the way that you want to think.
Wow, I couldn't have put it better myself. I feel really moved by this interview. Like, your questions are really wonderful, and I can tell you've really prepared for this, and it just feels so lovely to be talking to you like this, because I can tell you really understand, why I write these books, and why books like these are important, and we all write them for people like you that will really understand them. So thank you for understanding them.
No problem. Thank you for writing your books.
Yes.
So you are the Black Flamingo, of course, and here, especially me and Miss Stewart, we have a very passionate love for drag and for the people of the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, I'm a big fan personally of RuPaul and all things RuPaul's Drag Race, and Miss Stewart is a big fan of Plastique Tiara. So for our my final question, do you still do drag?
I haven't done drag in a while, but never say never. There may be a Black Flamingo anniversary event I might want to do drag for, or it might just be that I've still got all my outfits and I've still got the kind of the sass, but I've kind of taken a hiatus from doing drag, but you never know, the Black Flamingo may return.
So we loved the reference to Skellig and Heartstopper in I Can't Even Think Straight, and the intertextual reference to the Black Flamingo. They do say, if you want to write, read. So, what's your take on this? Who are your main influences?
Gosh, I have so many. I think when I think about it, I think about the authors who I'd love to have a career like. So I look at Michael Rosen as a huge inspiration because he writes for all ages. He's very outspoken on various political issues as well. So he uses his platform for good, and he writes very well and is a lovely guy. So that's the kind of thing I aspire to be doing. I'm very impressed with Mallory Blackman's career as well, and how she's paved the way for so many Black writers. And and Benjamin Zephaniah was a friend and mentor of mine up until he passed away last year. And so someone like that, who also was outspoken, wrote poetry, wrote novels, made music, did so many things, wasn't restricted by one form, genre, and there's so many more besides. Lem Cisse is another poet who's also written different types of books, including a memoir. And I think, I am influenced by anyone who's outspoken, anyone who stands up for what they believe in, who kind of uplifts and mentors others. I'm mentoring a younger writer at the moment, and that's a really important thing for me to be doing, because he's incredible, but also he's just reminds me of kind of like what it was like before you knew, you know, how to navigate this world of publishing, because it can be daunting when you first come into it. So yeah, and I'm also very inspired by people who are younger than me. There's a friend of mine called Travis Alabanza, who's a playwright and poet and kind of theatre maker and activist and just incredible person. And I think I kind of don't restrict my influences to those who are, you know, just older or more experienced than me. People that are younger than me. I'm often inspired by the young people I go into school and do workshops with, because they see the world differently and are able to kind of have hope and this kind of fire that sometimes as an adult you kind of it dims. Sometimes your fire dims, sometimes your hope is kind of lessened by your kind of perception of like what's practical and what's realistic. But I love when young people just are like, well, why not? Change the world, you know, like overthrow the system. And I love that energy, and so that's why I love writing younger characters, because I feel like they're less jaded than us adults in our 40s and above.
It's so important for to pave the way for a younger generation, and teaching these skills that you've learned over the years and how to express yourself can really show the younger generation that you can do it as well. And I just want to thank you so much for doing that for so many people in the UK and around the world who have read your books and looked up to you.
Well, thank you so much. And not only can the next generation do it, they may be able to do it better, you know.
So with the recent events, the Supreme Court's ruling on gender in the UK, the US administration's anti-DEI agenda, plus the general rolling back of LGBTQ plus rights across the globe, it feels like a scary time to be LGBTQ plus and trans in particular, especially if you're black or brown. As an author writing about LGBTQ plus characters / themes in these turbulent times, do you feel worried or emboldened?
Both. I feel both worried and emboldened. You know, coming back to the time when, you know, I was at school, we had Section 28, and I had no idea, you know, about the LGBT books that were already written and out there, and I had no idea about the LGBT people that were all around me, but were, you know, afraid to come out, or you know, would lose their jobs if they came out, for example, my teachers. But nowadays, you know, it's a different world because we have the internet, and so even if people try and ban books, you know, the word will still spread that they are out there. And, you know, even if, I think people will still be organising, people will still be kind of finding ways around these kind of restrictions. I think, you know, we fought Section 28. I say we, I didn't do it personally, but the community and our allies fought Section 28. You know, we won gay marriage, for example. You know, there's so many things that have kind of changed over time, and I think this kind of negative reaction and pushback to kind of equality, it can't last, you know, because we won't let it. I think people will not let this stand, and so I think we are in a troubling time. But I think the fact that we recognize it's a troubling time, you know, thinking to when I was younger, I didn't know I was restricted. I didn't know that things were being kept from me. Young people today know what's going on, and you know, adults too. We know what's going on, and we are, you know, thinking about how to fight it. We are fighting it. We are still writing. We are still meeting. We are still kind of being in community and supporting one another. And and I think that's maybe the difference for me, is seeing that, you know, so many people are aware and outraged and kind of standing up against these kind of these threats to our equality and our rights. So I think that is that is something I feel hopeful and optimistic about. But yeah, it is something that we can't be complacent on.
No.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people are so they're so scared of being people that are different. I think some people just need to realize that the world has changed over time, and even though you can try and crack down on these people who are LGBTQ plus, but you can't erase what they've done from history.
No. And they're a strong community. So.
We're a very strong community, and I think it's so cool that we're still fighting to change how we're perceived.
I feel like you said people who ban books and everything. People will always find a way to put it online. Like, tons of books were posted on Wattpad before they were even published, so you could just find them and always read them. It's
can't erase them completely.
Yeah, never be gone.
Anyway,
and shout out to all the librarians that are doing wonderful work with their pride displays and having LGBT books all year round. Because that's not easy for everyone in every library, but the librarians that are doing it, I know, are fierce about supporting the community, whether or not they are in the community or allies. I just know that librarians are doing an incredible job for us and with us, so I think that's something that I'm really happy to see.
Of course.
Miss Stewart being one of them.
Yes, Miss Stewart.
Ooh, yeah. Anyway, our final question is, what are you reading right now, and who would you recommend it to?
Goodness. So
Are you looking at a shelf?
Yeah, I was looking. I mean, I just finished a book called Love on Sight by Ashley Jensen, and it's an older YA. So it's a romance, and it's two black teenagers and a boy and a girl, and they kind of have a Romeo and Juliet style kind of sense of kind of there's things that could potentially keep them apart. But I think actually some of those things are more their own perceptions than kind of like reality. But I think it's really interesting seeing these characters who one's a Muslim, one's a Christian, one has kind of a very what they think of as kind of like high expectations and pressure on them from their parent, and the other kind of has been more he's managed to end up as a drug dealer, and he's kind of trying to get out of that life, but having a tough time escaping it. And I think the reason I was drawn to the book is because it's about Northwest London, where I grew up, and so I wanted to see kind of how that was being represented in the story for teenagers today. And at times it made me sad and frustrated, but I think because I think it was tough to kind of see that this is still the reality for many young people, that like that they're drawn into kicked out of school for one reason or the other, and then ends up dealing drugs or doing something that they wouldn't choose to do if they had other options. And so it was interesting to see it from that point of view, because I mostly work with the young people that are in school, so it was interesting to hear a story about a young person that isn't in school and has had a tough time with the education system, because those stories do need to be represented. And it was interesting because it was that all of that comes in a love story as well. So at the heart of it, it's a love story, but there's a lot of kind of like strong messages about kind of like not labeling black young men and not kind of stigmatizing them, because that can kind of like rob them of their opportunity for education and a good career. So yes, I think I got a lot out of it now I'm talking about it. So Love on Sight. Ashley Jensen is the author, and it's coming out, I believe, in a few months. It's not out just yet, but I got an advanced copy, because that's one of the perks of being an author. You get 7 books early.
Very nice. Very good.
Try it out when it comes out.
Yes, we will. We'll have to get it into the library.
Yes, definitely. It'll be book of the week.
Yeah, book of the week. Well, thank you
Yes,
so much
thank you so
for
much.
talking with us, and we wish you
My
every
pleasure.
and we wish you every success with your next novel, your new novel.
Thank you, and I'm wishing you every success with this wonderful podcast.
Thank
You're
you.
Wonderful at it was really excellent. So thank you. One of the best interviews I've ever had.
It's been an honour. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Okay,
Miss.
thank you.
Thank you, Miss Stewart.
Bye now.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Oh, you're so lovely.
I think it's just here at the end.
I just click this and
So at least.
there you go. You can leave the call if you don't want to end. Just end call for everyone
yeah.
because.
If it's still recording, just press go.
I need a photo.